because I wasn't sure if I put on the list of things that you should use or have with you, because I don't usually I use a little plate to mix on, and straight out of the little cups, it'll be difficult for you to be able to do that. Hi Sherry, I'm glad you got your link.
Oh my god. I'm so excited. It's ridiculous. Okay.
So I sent the email and I said, okay, you might want a paper plate. And if you're doing the wave motif, you may want some masking tape. It's not a have to, because I mean, this is initially your first painting and it's more for you than it is for, going out into the public, and you need to make sure to keep your canvas clean. Are the dimensions of it. So, what I thought we would do, because we have two of you that are doing the hydrangeas, and sometimes it's hard. I have to zoom in so far to make sure you can really see how I'm doing the painting. So please let me know if you can't see what I'm doing because I've gone off camera. And then I have the one that is the waves. I'll figure it out yet, guys, I promise, before this is all through. All right, I'm going to put a little piece of tape down so I know where to keep it. And then we also, so who's doing the waves? Graciela, you doing the waves? Or are you doing you're doing this? Okay. All right. There you go. So I wanted to show you that any of these, so I'm guessing that Liesel is doing the waves. I wanted to show you that you can do this with a round, or you can do it as a square. Totally up to you. So I'm going to kind of start the my spiel about how to approach your painting. Because I paint masters that then get repetitively painted by other people, I have to kind of approach things differently than you may want to. If you're doing this so that you can have your own line and you can sell to people, you have to approach it in the respect, well, at least I do, you don't have to, of making sure that what you're painting for details maybe falls on a stitch. I personally do that because of, I've seen what happens when people try to stitch a piece of mine that I haven't planned well for, like curved lines or straight lines, and especially lettering. And that's something we'll talk about with the wave. And I'm going to kind of demonstrate for you. Now you have, your canvases are completely prepped. They have had the line drawing put on, and then I sprayed it with the matte medium, which is on your list. And sorry, I stuffed it on my cart last night because I was doing finishing instead of painting yesterday. And then the matte medium. Okay, it's not, I always use Liquitex. I don't deviate, and I just try to use a coupon when I buy it. Because I just don't know. I've used this for so many years, I trust it. So if you want to experiment with another matte medium, I have used a gloss medium in a pinch, but I like that this gives you still a little bit of tooth and allows for the paint not to just slick off, and you get better coverage if you use a matte. you wouldn't think it would add that much of a difference, but the whole reason why I use the matte medium is because when I first started, the store that I was painting for said to me, you know, these canvases don't have any extra, you can't see paint on the back side, it all stays on top. Well, that's not the case anymore, because there's a lot of times where I flip a canvas over and it's got paint that's soaked all the way through. So I try to, when I prep my canvas, and this is my little brush, and it's like in the 80s we did a lot of stenciling, and so you had these brushes that were very blunt, and you literally went up and down on the stencil and dry brushed the paint on. It's the exact same thing that we do now. And I know I just went off a topic about how to approach your picture. Don't worry, I'll get back there again. So we're going to use just a standard brush to show you how to just dry brush this on. Now I know that you can't see the shine that is, wow, why does that make me so discombobulated trying to center this thing? But you're just going to tamp it on, and I'll pull it off and make sure there's no extra on the plate. And you just kind of stipple it in. You can scrub it a little to make sure that there's no holes that are filled. Okay. And somebody said, well, how can you tell Graciela, I'm videotaping this separately so that you won't have to see everybody's faces. So, but I'm going to let you anyway. Hold on. She's asking to record it. There we go. So you're just going to keep coming in and getting all of that scrubbed into your canvas. It's almost more important. So this is 13 mesh and 18 mesh, and it helps to have this because it's such a porous canvas that it'll suck all of the paint that you're trying to, as you're trying to get a good line going across and get fluidity, it'll just suck it right into this. I have tried to use gesso, which is a traditional painting. You prep all of your canvases with gesso when you're doing a stretched canvas. There's too much clay in it, and so it's still sucking all of that paint in instead of keeping it on the surface. So that's why I use the matte medium. Is it really does help to keep it on that level, and it kind of, I don't want to say it fills in the gutters, but it keeps, as you're bringing it across, if your brush is really dry and you don't have a lot of paint loaded on it, it'll look like it's hitting across the tops, but down in the gutters it'll leave little white bits. And then you have to come back and kind of scrub it in, and it's counterproductive. So let's just prep it the best way we can. So when I tape these off, I can show you this right now. You're just going to take your masking tape. Okay, you can see me. All right. And you really got to make sure you're following that line. I have a lot of lights on because we're doing this video call or class, Zoom class. And so, there. But I use a lot of lights. I use 2 different swing arm lamps, and because it just is so difficult to really see if you don't. I think that was kind of a hard thing with our last class that was in person, because while it was a bright area, if you weren't sitting in the right spot, you couldn't see what you were doing as well. So we're just taping this down. So what I was saying about, if you are the stitcher that is painting this for yourself, you need to decide whether or not you, of course I walked off with all my samples and put them someplace else. Hold on. You have to decide whether or not, where did I put them all? It's what happens when you clean right before. So when you see this shading, maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you're going to shade it with a variegated fiber in the background and you don't need to paint it. So you're just going to do maybe the lightest color, and then you're going to put a different decorative stitch using a variegated fiber. But if you're doing this for, you know, to put into a line and to sell, of course, then you're going to do a gradient in there because you have no idea. Well, maybe your style might not dictate that you use a gradient of it or shading of any kind. So, I just remembered where those were. Here we go. So, say this one with all the shading. Well, that is the exact same design as this one. The waves are all the same. It's just I wanted to demonstrate that you don't have to necessarily, can you see it between with the zoom there? So you can do the exact same pattern in a different style for yourself, if you're a little intimidated by the shading of the waves. So these are a few things that you need to think about for how you want to approach it, but I'm going to show you how to do shaded, flat. We're going to talk about all of that. When you're painting, don't use water to to thin the paint. Sometimes our paints get a little stodgy, the little craft paints. I started storing them upside down because what was happening in the wire rack that I got from AC Moore, laying them like this, is this entire amount would get a skin over it if I didn't use it for a long time, because there is air inside of these, so they are going to get a weird little skim of dry paint in them. And so I started doing it like this because then the skim would be at the bottom, less volume there, and it wouldn't plug up this end just by having it up like this. So then it was like an immediate plug up when I would just try to pour it out. So that's why I store my paints the way I do, upside down now. You got to watch it when you pop the top. Sometimes it's like, boop, and it wants to just bubble out. It's very annoying, but so far it's working pretty good. So I'm just going to make sure that this one, now I have used regular house paint brush to do my tamping in and my dry brushing. You do not have to be married to, you know, a fancy brush like this. It's whatever gets you through. Just don't get it overly wet. I always put a piece of paper towel behind it, because as you're working, you can drive the paint down into it and it will help suck it down in and get it out of those holes. I don't use a pin to get rid of clogged holes. I come back through with my paintbrush and look and see where there might be a clog and tamp it a little bit and pop it. Because what happens is a ring will develop and of paint, and it's harder to pull the needle through. So it's just good to kind of be aware as you're going along. Sometimes taking it and looking at it into a dark area of the room, you'll be able to see holes, or even holding it up to a light, you'll be able to see where the light is blocked coming through. Don't overly saturate your canvas with paint or the matte medium, because what happens is it affects the sizing that keeps this canvas really stiff. If it starts to get a little warpy, it's okay. We can steam that, reset the sizing, and it'll iron nice and flat again. Just make sure that the paint is down on a piece of paper towel or a cloth so it doesn't stick to the heat of your iron. Not that I've ever had it happen, but let's just not tempt fate on that one, especially after you just finally finished your painting and you went, okay, Kelly, it's now stuck to my iron. Thank you very much. So these show you the difference between what we're doing today, which is more free form and shaded, and these are counted. And so you'll hear people using the term, it's stitch count painted. So this image is exactly the same as this image because they counted it out and painted it for the stitch every time. You can't really do that with what we're about to do on these. You can make sure that all the important parts are hitting it. So the first thing that I think would be really smart to do for all of you is to go ahead and decide what your lightest color is going to be for your basket or for your water. And taking your little piece of extra canvas, which I will just use one of these, and I want you to take a little bit of, let me see, I think I have, okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of almondine on here, and I want you to just kind of play around with it. See if you have all of your stuff with you. If you don't, we won't drag this out too long. All right, but what you'll see is that this paint, I find that Americana Deco Art is, and it's in your list. Oh, and I just smeared it all over my canvas. So we'll do a little bit of, okay. And one of the things that you can play around with as you're doing any kind of little painting is by letting the existing paint kind of run out as you're using it, and just lighten your touch a little bit and just use the tips, and you'll see it get lighter and lighter, creating a gradient. But also, if you grab a little bit of the matte medium and mix it in, it has a watercolor effect. And so then you can just go lighter and lighter. And then when you go to layer it back on top of this, it should shift it slightly darker, but not like, it'll just make it more opaque, not take it to the next value level. So I'm going to come over here onto the basket. I started people, I was giving them two. so that they could do one as a test and they didn't have to like commit. And I thought it was really funny because then they were like, wait a minute, I have to paint two of these? I don't know that I really want to paint one of these completely. And I was like, if you want to jump in on your initial one, go for it. I just thought it would be nice for them. So if you're working on the wave one, Liesel, then what you would do is you would do the exact same thing we're doing here with this, but I want you to put the lightest color all over your canvas. Don't make it so thick. So hold on, let me get them started. So I'm going to not do the square basket that I kind of did. I kind of changed it up, the design, because I'm constantly doing Nantucket baskets with it being that I live on Cape Cod. And so I'm going to look at, this is my last stitch. Okay. And I am using extra thick on paint, you know, straight, uncut color, because, move this in a little, so a little brighter. I'm trying to cover up my pencil lines. I got a little heavy with them when I did this because I wasn't exactly sure where it would end. And then, so that's 1, 2, 3. And so it would end 1, 2, 3 there. All right. Now, at this point, this is such a small area, but if you feel like it, you can take your number 2 brush, and get a little load of paint on there and just start tamping it on to do more general broad coverage. Okay. I have a real thing about not leaving the pencil showing or any black lines, and it stems from, it's why I do not use Sharpies, and it stems from the fact that I'm a finisher, and sometimes if that paint isn't covered, sometimes the fiber that they used doesn't cover, and you can see, especially around the outside edge, you can see when I turn it over to finish it, I have to turn a little extra over if their stitching doesn't hide that black line. And so that's why I tend to use the pencils. And I actually think I used my number 2 HB because this is awfully dark around the outside. And I usually just use I think it's a 2H that I put on your sheet. H means hard. Hard means less lead goes onto whatever you're drawing onto. Okay. So the number 2 that they used to make you take tests with because of the lead content, I don't know, or the darkness, it gives you a darker line because it's an HB. It's like right on the border of being, that's your medium, your mid. Yeah, I can't think of the term I want. I'll come back to that. It's the pencil that stems, that's your 0. It's not B and it's not H, it's H and B. So it'll give you a pretty decent lead on it. All right. So once you get your light brown painted in, I want you to figure out where you want to put your basket weave and kind of think about how you want to paint it. Do you want to do the lines like I did on the front, or do you want to, hold on, let me see, let's do the honey brown, and then I'm going to get my light color. So Liesel, I mixed a special color for you because I also don't tend not to paint straight out of the bottle because they tend to be, they're going to dry one shade darker than what you have mixed, the color that you have mixed. Where's my other full bottle? Right next to it, of course. Okay. Typical of myself. All right. So definitely feel free to absorb everything that I'm saying about this other painting. I try not to mix with my bristles. If I need to cut the color, this is white, it's not matte medium. I put them right next to each other a lot because then I can just pull a little bit in and mix it into the white. This can be my darkest and it can be my lightest if I wanted to, and then I could pull that into the medium color. All right, that's what putting them right next to each other can be beneficial. So,
Let me ask you something.
yep,
The other, the two clear, you don't put it, you put it after you paint it or
I
before?
put it on before because that helps prime the canvas. And you don't have to put anything on after. I am using it to make the beige that you were using more not lighter, but gives it the ability to use it for shading. So I'll show you in this, okay? So when you need, go ahead.
You put the liquid text
Yep.
before,
Mm-hmm.
but the two clear, you put it before the liquid text? The other,
The spray, yes. So the spray sets the pencil because if you don't set the pencil, it'll rub off as you're trying to brush on the clear. So it's like if you were drawing with pastels to get them to stay, or charcoals, or you spray it with a clear acrylic. Same thing here. If you try to paint over the top, if I tried to paint, and sometimes if I'm running low on my clear, or I don't hit a certain area enough, I'll go to put the clear on it with the matte medium and my brush will start to smear it and you'll see a little gray haze because it didn't get enough of the clear spray on it. And I just mean because the wind took it away, because you need to spray that outside in a well ventilated area. Do not breathe that spray paint. The clear, this stuff that you paint on, it has no smell, so you're okay. But sometimes it doesn't hit the canvas quite the way you think it does. And so then you get inside and you're going along thinking, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden this gray smear comes across. And it's like, oh no, because then I have to go back in and white out that area because that gray will affect the color you're putting on top of it. So anytime you have a color that you need to eradicate, that you need to get rid of, what happens, well, so say you had a royal blue and you didn't like the blue and you thought, okay, I need to lighten this up. To make it bright, you need to use white to eradicate that area, to cover up that area. I use, if it's a really, yep,
Second,
yep,
sorry, before we just go over correcting the color, just the sequence is spray canvas, draw with AB pencil, then use matte.
draw, it's draw.
Draw with AB, okay.
Yep, with the HB,
HB.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then spray it to set the lead so it doesn't smear when you're
Okay.
painting. Then, once that's dry, you use the matte medium.
Thank you.
Yes. So bringing in this lightest color. And if you ever paint over something and go, oh great, I just painted over my pencil lines and now I can't see. But you can, because you have a line drawing right in your packet and you just lay it right back underneath and you'll see where all of your lines are. Okay, it's on the second page where all of the paints and supplies are. That little picture that's the line drawing is what I took yours from. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna get the wave. I appreciate your patience because this is my first time teaching this as a Zoom class. And I'm kind of all over the place with, I didn't think to have that close to me. So I'm painting over this, and this is kind of the perfect instance, is I am going to put this like that, and I'm just going to lay it underneath it. This is if you can't see your lines because you painted over them. Okay, so you always have a little line drawing to get that has your major. You see there's not a lot of details on it. You have to put the details in after because you are going to paint over a majority of the lines we put in. So that's why as I'm coming along and painting in this generic color or the lightest color, because that's what you're all doing right now. I want you all painting in all the light color for your basket. I don't want you to move into the flowers yet. I want you to decide, do I want to do the 2 lines of color and then one in between? This is where you get to play with how you want your basket to look. Okay, I tried to make sure that the pictures on the front of the packets were big enough that if you wanted to count out what I had done or kind of come close to that pattern, you can. I know it does not look like I'm actually painting a color on this right now, but I promise it is. It's just blowing it out because of how pale it is. All right. And I know that half of this wave is going to get painted darker. And so I'm not really that concerned about how thick and opaque it is, that it's, you know, an even coloring. So when I do any kind of gradients, especially against a hard line, okay, here's our lines, because my lights aren't quite as bright as I normally have them. I can see there. Okay. Oh, this is gonna make me nuts. There. Okay. So I'm going to come in for this with my darkest color. I turned this whole canvas around because the bottom of the wave is going to be the darkest. And I'm going to use up a majority of this I'm going to put the first baseline edge in, grab a little medium, and medium color. I'm going a little lighter with the color of paint that I grabbed, and you just start feathering it down, because now it has a little bit of the dark paint with the lighter paint. Now I take some of the lighter paint and I can kind of start coming up into it with the lighter that's on my brush. Gotta pop those out. So it's kind of starts mixing with the paint that's already on your brush into the wet. So it's a wet on wet. We were talking about dry brushing. You're putting down a wet paint and then you're coming in and using that to help make a gradient, to get that shadow. Okay. And you just keep going all the way down. Now, I used to teach this, tell people that were doing this, because this is going to have a monogram on it. I would tell them, I started doing the instructions where you just avoid the area where the letter should be, and you have it underneath, and we draw it on, and then I started to realize that the majority of the people that are taking the class that like this piece aren't going to be able to continue that gradient in such kind of short, chunky areas. So it made it more difficult to try to avoid, to keep the white areas. So now I have everybody do the paint in, and then I have them put the letter underneath and go over it in white. Now, obviously, if you're using, where is it? Oh, I think I put it, is it in there? If you're doing something that has a light background, you don't have to paint white over this before you paint it blue. You may have to paint it a couple more times as far as to get that nice navy, but that's because, so the whole eradicating the color thing, when you go, if you have a pink and you're going to paint it over the top of this yellow, that yellow is going to alter the color. So it's just like when you want to paint your apartment, walls, whatever, a specific color, they give you a primer that's dark. They give you a primer that's like half the color in value. They'll give you one that's kind of this weird, maybe pink if you're doing red, because it is going to make it a richer color. But if you're doing pink, it's going to make it salmony, and you're going to have to keep building it up and maybe adding a little white to the pink to try to bring it forward. Whatever you're painting it over, that's why you can't paint over navy and have it be nice and bright. It's going to take on the tones that you're painting over. So if you want really nice, even color for doing letterings, fonts, or pretty much anything, you want to put in some special little motif, like that dog to cat thing I did the other night live. You have to go in and paint out the white to make sure you're getting the right color that you want the first time, because it'll just waste your time not going in and priming that. Okay, so while you're putting your waves in, Liesl, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put in, there, So, where's my paper? Forget how I did it. I have had some people that just put suggestions. Okay, now you see how I'm kind of scrubbing that across? Watch again. When you go to pull a color across, if you don't have a lot of paint on, it'll start looking like dot dot dash. See the white? And well, maybe you can't. Yeah, you can see it. So there's a couple of things that you can do. You can load up your brush some more and really put a nice thick line down. I do that, and then I come back just with the tip of my brush and pull it down into those white places. I try not to do this. If I can get a good line, this is 13 mesh, so it's a little harder. If I can get a good line without doing that, I don't have to keep going back over and layering it, because when you pull back across, you'll tend to lift up the color you just laid down, that nice thick color, and you'll have to let it dry and then come back in with another one if you can see white spots. And when I mean white spots, I mean like it looks like shading instead of a consistent thick color line that you wanted to create this flat line color. Okay, so you come in and you get all of your, however you've decided. If your paint starts to get a little stodgy, grab a little bit of the matte medium.
One question.
Yep.
You never water on your, if you're gonna change color, you don't clean your brush with water, no?
Oh yeah, I do. Yep. You just don't see me doing it because I'm talking as I'm doing it, but absolutely. Unless it's in the same tonal family. So if I'm going to, I'm just right now working with this brown, but if I wanted to work, if I want to make it lighter, I'm not going to get rid of all of that darker brown. I'm going to use some of that to make this a little shade darker. And so I'm kind of mixing it right there on my brush and letting it, so I'm not wasting any of my paint. So if I wanted to come in here, I could come in and lay a medium between the darkest and the lightest and just have this flat color make, yeah, you can't have two there, can you? So you got to do 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then skip 2. Doesn't look as fine when you're doing it on 13 mesh, but there are a lot of people that cannot see 18 mesh, and there's not a lot of things designed out there for 18 mesh, so they do really love it when something else comes out on 13. And I'm pulling this until you start to try to teach somebody how you do something, do you realize exactly how much I go back and forth to make sure that there is no white that is deep in these gutters, because like I said, 13 mesh, the weave is coarse, and so you have to come in. So see all that I got on my brush? I don't want to waste that. I don't need that much right now, but I want you to roll it and pull and then come back into it again, and it'll unload all of that extra, and that way you can just grab a little bit at the tip. You really won't see the paint come up to the collar. Very rarely do I let it get that deep. I will roll it, get as much of it off, wash it, okay, wipe it on my pants, pretty typical move of mine as well, and then come back in, grab that color, and keep painting. And I didn't go across where the handle is. So I'm going to come across 1, 2, 3, 4, and I just totally, oh, okay, that's not the spot I need to count. So the rest of the painting is so freeform comparatively, because we're not doing any kind of counting up there. We're not doing any of that. Uh, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 1, 2. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this would be darker. All right. Two, 1, 2 there, I guess. Sometimes I lose track. And this should be dark here, like that. Now I'm going to do the same color across the bottom. And I'm going to use, I think I gave you a burnt sienna, kind of reddish. And it's just, I'm going to cut it a little bit, so it's not quite, because it'll get relatively dark when you paint it on. And I'm just going to boop, come right along and put those stitches in. And oh shoot, you know what? You guys keep going. I just realized that Liesel's probably trying to communicate with me, and I don't have my, okay. Do we let the matte medium? Oh, sugar, you didn't receive your little extra piece. I'm so sorry. I will send you some. It doesn't help you for right now, but I will send you some so you can practice on it. My apologies. Okay. I'll just send you an extra design. Okay, Liesel, and then that way, in case you feel that you kind of weren't able to practice what you're doing, you'll be able to, do another one the way you really wanted to do it. Okay? All right. And again, so I started, I made the counted ones, the counted packets, because I had so many people coming into class saying to me, oh, I thought we were just painting this exactly as you had it, and wait a minute, I have to make up my own mind and decide on something creative instead of just sitting here painting by number. I said, yeah, this is your chance to create what you want. out of this. And so it is kind of funny because then when people actually chose those packets in the last class, and I said that because some of them were kind of struggling, it really is hard to count them out sometimes. The lighting, the whatever. And so they were like, why? Why would anybody ask you this? I said, because they haven't ever tried it, so they don't know the difference. Okay. And so then that becomes oh, well, that's why it's not as simple. And this is kind of a little more organic when you get up into the flowers or when you're doing your waves and the gradients, because you don't have to do those gradients, like I said, the same way where I'm doing this even keel all the way across. So you're able to decide, I want this, I don't want that. Now see how this darker color, as I pulled it across, you can see that it's lighter because when I pulled it across, my brush back across, it took off a majority of the thick paint that I had put on there intentionally, because I'm trying to achieve nice flat colors versus shaded colors. All right. Now you're going to you have a guide. You know, I gave you the paperwork, right? So you can see that as you're starting to put these in, and Liesl, let me know when you get your waves done and I will do the alphabet with you, okay? It's just kind of plucking along. And if you ever have a spot that gets too dark, you just come back in with a little white of your lightest color. You can even turn the canvas around and bring the white in here, the lighter, okay? You bring the lighter in here and just start to kind of let it run out as you're painting it down, and you'll get, oop, where am I? There. You'll get the lighter gradient coming back down in, and you can almost even just kind of white it out lightly, just kind of the pressure that you put on your brush, it really does make a difference because you're either pulling it across or you're letting it, by going very lightly, that pressure can keep that paint from really getting on there heavily. And so that's definitely something you want to pay attention to, is about how heavy you are doing it. Now, hydrangeas come in lots of colors. Do whatever you love. Interestingly enough, because of this heat, all of our hydrangeas have gone what they call antique, which is where they start to get very mottled and muted colors. So again, I am taking the lightest blue that I gave you and Blue Haven, and I'm going to cut this down with some white. And when I'm doing the major mixing, I use the end, okay, and just pull a little into it. If you're trying to do this with black to make like a very pale gray, you're just going to take the tip of your brush and put it, and you only have black and white. Okay, let's make that assumption. You dip the end of your brush into the black, just a tiny bit, and then bring it over to the white. Don't lay black and white right next to each other, because what'll happen is you need only a tiniest bit of a dark color to add to make a lighter tone in the beginning. Okay? So don't be fooled by what I'm doing with these mediums and lights. I do that a majority of the time, but not with black and white. And I tend, so while we're kind of laying in our colors, the reason why I started doing things the way, using craft paints versus like heavyweight, heavy body, like, you know, anything in a tube, or the medium weight ones that have like a little jar of Liquitex. All right, so Sherry and Graciela, I'm going to start putting in the lightest colors and deciding where I want my light flowers, where I want my dark flowers. I've had people do these in purples and pinks versus blues. You can do them in, I know that I sent you blues and stuff, but don't be afraid. You have this line drawing. Make another one. You can start from the beginning. You'll get a little piece of canvas. Most, you can buy the mono canvas online. A lot of your needlepoint stores have it, and you can say, I need an 8x8 piece, and that will is more than ample for a 4x4 or 3x3 ornament. Okay, so I'm going to start with the same way I did it in our picture, where I'm just doing a general light inlay, trying to avoid getting it on the basket that I just painted. Not always easy. Use a tiny brush if you're concerned about it. All right. I tried originally to do some warm blues and some cool blues to differentiate the different blossoms. In class, I just have, in the past, giant tubs, not giant, giant to me, tubs that have every paint that I have over in my cart, so people can choose the different colors. When I go in person to Phoenix and to Florida, they're gonna have the little paint kits, because I just can't travel with all that paint. Okay, so now I'm going to grab our Blue Haven that I cut the color so that I could, with white, so I could get my lightest ones. I'm going to make this my lightest color for this blossom. Okay. And I think we'll do that a little bit for the outside of this one. Trying to keep it on a little heavier. Okay. All right. And I don't know why, but it helps when I put my hand in there, because then it doesn't feel like it's so bright white for this. Okay. All right. So I sort of have the basics in. And I'm going to take the baby blue Set that in for my lightest of the darkest. Okay. So then what I did for class, I gave you some darker blues, right? I know I did. I just don't want to look in my thing. So I had some navy, pretty sure. Boop. And I think I did royal blue. If you ever want to change the vibrancy, you can take some of the dark bittersweet brown that I put in, and you can mix a little, just dab of it in, and it'll help cut down on how intense the color is. I'll pull some of that out too. All right. So I know that right here, I want to redefine this edge because we're going to put it behind. Okay. We're going to make it look like this one is in front of the one to the left. All right, like this. And I'm going to come out and touch up the outer finished edge, grab all of that pencil line, make sure that the way it's painted on this outer edge, because sometimes it's hard to control your pencil as you're going across these. And it skips along and it doesn't really give you maybe the puffiness of it that you want. That it's definitely not going to stitch the way that you wanted. You know, that's always a possibility. You think, oh, that's going to work. And then once you start painting it, you kind of realize, oh, that if I stitch that area, it's going to look like a square versus it's very hard to do curves, okay, and have them look the way you want. A lot of people, okay, so here's a thing, maybe you know, maybe you don't from watching my videos. I don't actually stitch. After all this many years of doing it, 20 some odd years, it doesn't mean that I don't understand stitching. It's not my go-to. There's other things that I'd rather needle felt and paint for enjoyment. But I am very aware as a designer that stitchers like balance. If this N is 5 stitches wide and X amount, they like them to match. And so in order to sell it, you want to make sure you're doing it in a manner that people are going to want to keep buying your stuff because it's easy to stitch. Okay, so I'm mixing up a little bit of this royal, and so these are going to be my areas that need to go darker. I'm going to lay in some dots for and don't feel you have to use that straight out. And the dots, I'm going to put my centers of my flowers so that I know where to do my shading. And it's just all random, just kind of, you know, I say that, and then you start to look at how you do the dots. And it's like, okay, those are pretty symmetrical. Maybe I need to move this one a little closer. Okay. So now I'm hyper conscious about it because I don't want it to look like a little Swiss polka dot. All right. And I can come back through and change these out as far as the color of them, but I'm just establishing where everybody's going to be. And I'm going to use the baby blue to do the colors on the lightest. You can put another one just that close. There. Because I don't mind if it mixes a little bit with the other blue that I had on my brush. Kind of gives it that watercolory effect that hydrangeas often do have. I didn't think we were going to have any this year because of the cold snap. We had that warm snap, and then at the beginning of May, it was like, ooh, it's coming early. And then, poof, frost. Ooh, that isn't good. Pretty sure I gave you guys a warm medium blue, which I have not pulled mine yet. Which one was it? I think it's deep denim. Even darker, but I don't like, there we go. Really way too intense for my liking. That blue that I just kind of made up. And now it's mixing with that color that I know, who knew that painting flower centers in takes so long. Okay, so I kind of have everybody set the way I want them to be. And so Blue Haven was our lightest. So we're going to take some baby blue. And I'm not sure that that'll be quite dark enough. So I'm going to mix it with some of my royal. All right, just to get a little different medium shade. And now I'm going to grab a little bit of this matte medium. This way. Okay, and I'm going to put it right into the paint, and I'm thinning it because I want it to be more transparent. See how thin that is? Okay, because then when I come in, let me see, where's my picture? Okay, so this is kind of, we're going to do some shading along the edge. And you see how it's not quite as dark as that center, but you can definitely tell it's not this color over here. All right. So for right now, we're going to be shading with this kind of semi-transparent, lightly putting in a shadow. So see, you can see that there's some light stitches there. And just kind of do some general shading. This is your shading moment while Liesel's putting her waves in. So just keep kind of going between the dots, leaving your white spaces or your lighter color. You can come back in with another lighter color and put some highlights on these petals of where these florets are. And I'm just kind of skimming through. I'm not being extremely deliberate, and yet slightly am. All right, so I just took a bunch of royal blue, and I'm going to grab a little bit of that brown, and I'm going to cut it way down. And I'm going to grab some of the navy, and what I mean I'm going to cut it way down is I want to make this purple, purpley royally blue as they call it, into a shade darker than what our centers are. Because if you look at the picture, right along, and I'm going to end up eradicating that center right there. I come in and put some defining stitches to show I had done them lighter a few minutes ago, and I'm just kind of shading in these areas. I'm not doing it so I just brought in the medium color, that one that we mixed, and we kind of did the same thing where we added a little of this navy in with the baby blue and created this odd color that, oh, heaven help us if we have to do again. No, I'm just kidding. So you just kind of keep adding in. So I'm going to add a few more kind of shaded dark spots. And if I don't like it, I can come back in and add some other, lighten it up, darken it. Okay, and there. And that's how we make it so that our stitchers are able to see where this light one ends and the other one begins. So now that I have that edge in, while I have this wet, I'm going to put the dark area of this one in, the one that's on the right hand side in the picture, because that's going behind back as well. How's everybody doing? How you feeling about it? Go ahead and turn your mics on and let me know if you have any questions or and if there are things I'm not answering as I'm going along, definitely tell me because I don't want that. I actually am glad I get to paint along with you because I don't get to do this in the other class when you're in person because it's too difficult for them to really see what I'm doing. And so, while everybody's being creative and painting it the way they really, want, I'm kind of standing around going, enough of this creativeness. Let me in on it. I'm not used to standing around like that because of the finishing class is very defined, whereas this is a little more creative on how you want to do. I think I got a little too dark around some of my florets on that one. Maybe not. Not I think I want to add a couple more out here. I think I am going to pull a little darker color for our centers on the ones that have the shading. At least on this one, because I think I kind of got a little too I have more of the medium color than my light color. So I'm just gonna come in and set a few more centers in. All right, Liesl, how you doing? Let me know if you need anything. All right. So I'm gonna use the Blue Haven straight to get the shading in my lightest. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the matte medium so it's a little transparent and build it up. So it's a little more of a subtle color wash. It's easier to do that on this one as well because it's the lightest color. So you can keep building and adding onto that wash to get a deeper baby, Blue Haven. I just totally took out my light color. Okay, great, Liesl. You doing okay, Sherry?
I am, thank you.
Okay, good. Is it living up to your expectations? You were very excited about this.
Oh, sure. I'm
Good.
having,
Excellent. It's either one way or the other. I get the ones that are just like, I'm never, and the other ones are just giddy and like, oh, this is great. It's like, really, is there not a way that I can make you happy? For the ones that are just, it's like, no, it's just, I'd rather stitch. Okay, I get that.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me ask you something.
Mm?
Because up to now, I love the glass. To be honest, I didn't thought that I'm gonna like it so much. But I'm not good painting. I don't have my hands are not. I'm very good at stitching,
Right.
and but I'm loving it, and it's less stressful than I thought.
Oh, that's good.
I take and I fix it.
Yeah.
I put light color and I fix the line.
Yeah.
But I'm not good draw it. If I, for example, if I find a design that I want to convert in a needle point,
Mm-hmm.
it's a way to transfer the design into the canvas.
Okay, so as long as it isn't somebody else's artwork, then, and even if it, like, say it was, oh, you really liked one of my designs that's in my line, it's not kosher to copy somebody's design that way. But this particular picture, I actually just, you can find generic pictures of hydrangeas on the internet. And I just traced around the outside of one of the flowers. And then I took my computer, because I do a lot on the computer. I scanned, I can either, I don't want to say it. You can snip it, or you can do a screenshot and then kind of do a line drawing, or you can trace over it with tracing paper and get your outline like you see that I have there, that you have in your booklet. So say there was a really great ad that had this photograph of flower vase arrangement, say, or a little ducky, or whatever. You can literally trace around that over it with your tracing paper and use, I use this size, the ultra fine Sharpie, to do the lines on the one that you have. And then you can either scan it in to your computer and resize it, or you can take it to a photocopier and make the image bigger and smaller. And then you have a line drawing that's like a coloring book that you can just fill it in and paint it however you want. So there's ways to use images that are already out there and utilize those.
How you do it to the canvas?
The same way, with that outline, you're gonna just take your plain canvas, okay? All right, like so, and you lay your canvas over the top of it, okay? And this is what I was talking about earlier with your pencil, is just trace around, because that's how I did yours, is I just traced it right on and then sprayed it, and now you're painting it and did all the prep. So, but I do this to get this. I just took outlines of these different flowers, and in my computer I laid them over each other, and then I made like a little faux basket. And so I use Photoshop, and I also use another publisher type layout program. They're really simple, but I don't want you to, if you're don't like computers or you're not really into it, I still think you can use it. It's a simple enough program. I have that. I use that. It's called Office Suite. There's a free video in the needlepoint finishing playlist on YouTube that's conquering ovals. And it shows how that software and how you can make the ovals for when you do finishing. It's the same thing that I use to lay things out, scale it up, scale it down. And, you know,
It's not that can create something geometric.
okay, hold on. that I did. Of course, I'm not. Okay. So I knew that this canvas is 3 inches wide, right? So I knew that a 1.5 inch circle would fit 2 up, okay? And so I just did 1 circle here, 1 circle here, and I just traced them. And I got this pattern for geometrics. And I just never painted it because I wasn't sure people would, because they weren't counted out, that people would not want to do it for a class. So I just never brought it to fruition. But you're right. You can literally use a quarter, a dime, do some generic geometrics. And since I gave you my litany about don't trace, if there's a coloring book page that you like that has a cute animal on it, or there's free clip art out there, as long as you're not putting it into a line that you're selling to other people, the free clip art you can use. And just ask when you put in free clip art, oh, say you want to do a dog. I don't know, just whatever you decide, and put that in what you want to do, and then hit free clip art line drawing so it looks like a line. And then you can size it up, size it down, paint it however you want. And essentially you're making it into your own. You're not selling it again. So you can do that. That's how you can get some of your simpler, a pumpkin, or, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do that you can find free clip art online and make it your own and bundle, stack it together and make it into your own thing. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, perfectly.
I
I
am,
do that all the time.
yeah,
Can you see me?
yeah.
So why don't I see me here? While we were doing that, I did a generic bird
See?
on a piece. This is the spare paper.
Right.
I practiced spare paper. See, I was starting to do the brown lines,
Yep.
and then I just had.
Cute.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So you can, the key is to sizing it up or sizing it down to the size that you want. For, okay, I want a 3x3 that fits into one of these boxes, the self-finishing boxes, or I just want a nice 4-inch ornament. Easy enough, or okay, I'm just going to use my roll of tape and trace around it. Okay, that's about, 4.5 inches wide, and then you can just draw something in it that. What's really interesting is even though you think you're not good at drawing, a simple image that's maybe a little primitive, can stitch up really beautifully because, like you said, you're really good at stitching, but you feel like you're not. But look at what you've probably already done with your stitching that changes what we've painted completely. So you don't really have to worry about that. I mean, Sherry cranked out a little tiny sketchy thing of a bird, and it's great. And I'm sure she'll end up stitching it. But
So actually, it's funny that you said that because I'm a geometric counted stitch person,
yep,
and that's why because I'm trying to break away from the rigidity of what I do. Because like this hydrangea shape, you basically end up stitching it all continental. I
right,
mean, maybe I could get a little fancy on the basket, but or that little birdie. It's funny. It's what I usually don't end up stitching.
right.
I really like stitching the fancy patterns. So I'm trying new That's why I'm here. I'm
So-
trying new stuff.
And yet, when you look at how some of these people do very shaded things with an open stitch that is a geometric stitch over something that's very organic, it works. And it's so interesting. And it's interesting
Yeah.
just to see how this industry has changed for
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
those stitches.
Yeah.
But yeah, so try out everything. I gave my spiel about copyrighted work, so I just so many stores are worried that teaching this class is going to have people copying other people's artwork. And it's like, no, what ends up happening is they appreciate the painting and now they can customize, they can put the lettering on for the stocking or, you know, that type of a thing. So I had it. I had them all right here. Brilliant. My letters. Where'd my under the paper plates.
What are you so hungry, Oscar?
Class is always at dinner time, isn't it? Or snack time. Oh, you're okay, Sherry. My favorite was when somebody's during a finishing class, somebody's pug fell asleep, but you couldn't see it. And so, but she was, her camera, you know, was on because everybody was doing like what we're doing. And all of a sudden, it sounded like somebody let the biggest fart go. And it was this dog snoring. And she's going, "That's my dog. He's fell asleep next to me." It's like, it's okay. You're okay. It was hilarious. That was my favorite. That and when one of the ladies fell asleep and I was like, "Okay, everybody, goodbye. Somebody's fallen asleep." "Who fell asleep? Where are they sleeping?" And she woke up and I'm like, "You guys are awful." You woke her up. Okay. So I am going to talk to Liesel for a minute here. Even if you're not ready, we're going to talk about it because we're at 7:30 and I want to make sure that you hear this. Not that I won't stay with you until we're done. I will. So you, just like we were talking about a minute ago with how you deal with putting things on. Okay, Graciela, this is how we put the monograms on. So once this is completely painted, Liesel is going to come back in with white and she is just going, or dark navy blue. I don't, you know, it's whatever she wants. And actually, I probably will because it'll show up better. We're going to use this. And you're just going to do a basic trace over with your brush so you know where your lines are. Instead of doing the pencil and trying to avoid this area, you're just going to trace it with your white or your color. And you can come back and figure out, or, you know, put some good, better coverage of your paint. All right. Somebody thinks I really need to talk to them, and I think it's my daughter. Kills me every time. Because then I'm going to come, once I have the basic line in, I'm going to come back and clean up all those edges and make, or, yeah, and make sure that everybody is going to stitch nicely and fill it in with color. Again, you don't have to, if you're going to be stitching over it, you don't have to do those, you know, solid, dark. You just need, you can make the decision, okay, I want to stitch it like this on the fly. This is going to give me a better line. This is going to cover better, however you want to pursue it, okay? And my thing is the most important places when you're doing the hydrangeas or any of these that require some detail, those are the spots that you make sure are, if you don't want to question where do I go next with this stitch, you know, you're doing a painting of something for your friend that they're going to stitch themselves. So looking at it, you say, okay, I need to come back and clarify where she's going to stitch here, or they are going to stitch, what needs an extra little focus. My personal opinion, eyeballs and mouths, noses, facially kind of features are extremely important for when I do masters, because a lot of times the painters don't always, at the painting companies, they might not be stitchers at all, and they might not know anything about the industry. So I try to make sure that it's obvious. And sometimes they come back from there and they've fallen into the gutter and haven't hit a stitch at all. It's like, okay, that's not gonna do. So if I leave this, this is gonna look like a straight angle when it's stitched. And I don't really want that. I want it to have a little curve to it. So I'm going to try to come out like that. How's that gonna stitch? And then I'm gonna come in I might white that bit out that I just did. Okay. And navy is navy. It requires many layers. Not really, but you do have to. Sometimes that whole, get a big load of paint on there and then pull it, and don't go back over it like I'm doing right now. I'm trying to get rid of a bunch of paint that's up in my brush. So with the hydrangeas, I had a few in class who said, okay, I don't really like how I painted them, but I'm going to do French knots for all of them. And so then it made it much more organic looking instead of just doing continental. Oh, good. There we go. There's the third. I kind of squint to see. I look at it and I kind of squint, like let it blur out so I can kind of see how the line of it will go. And if it's gonna look weird, sometimes they look weird, what can I say? But this font sheet is, I'll hold it up like this. So this font sheet that I made up with individuals, I laid this out on that program that I was talking about. And people are always surprised that I've done it like this and not put it into a program that counts it all out, that you make each stitch, that it's just this big blank letter. But that's just the easiest tool I found, because then, like, if you're putting a name on a stocking or a name on a year, whatever, then you are using that to lay it out, and you're able to figure out, okay, that's enough. Oh, I'm going to have to put a little more space in between. It takes a little bit of fudging, but to me, there was no consistent, what am I going to say? Books for, yes, they give you 1-inch letters and 1.5-inch letters, but ultimately doing that counting back then didn't make much sense to me. So that's how I started doing it. I started using the tools that I used all the time in my graphic design, and just the way I would design my own things to, sorry, I'm looking at my colors and I don't really have, where is it receding? Not too much there. Okay, I need to go over it with some, very cute. Very cute. It looked good, Sherry. I know, I'm being nosy, I'm watching.
I increased the borders and I painted over with the white, like you told.
Yeah,
I painted over the,
right.
yeah, and I did that.
Very cute. So we had somebody, they didn't like what they'd done, and they just did this shading, and it was just modeled. And then I was like, okay, do you want to throw a monogram on it? Yes. And so then she did that, because she just wasn't happy with, she was doing the anchor with the stripes, and she was doing them solid. Well, she was doing the monogram, but she was doing them solid, like the way I did it on the anchor. And she's just like, I don't know. And I said, you don't have to stay with that. And it turned out great. And she did black lettering. She goes, what do you think of doing black? And I laughed, because as a designer, stores will be like, oh, I can't sell a canvas that has, but I said, if you're willing to stitch it and you don't mind stitching black lettering, I said, if you want to make it a dark charcoal instead of going dark, what is it, 310 black pearl, just give your eyes a break and do it in charcoal. And it looked really sharp, because she did like a peach, and it had a little what we call like a Chatham red, which is, I guess a carmine red is the most, I would think, generic name for it. And that's how I was like, but this is how it is. It's all about how you want to do it, not the way I do. I'm just telling you the tricks of the paint and how to make your life easier when you are doing it, because oh, so many years spent. So I started telling you about why I use the craft paint, and that's because I had two little babies at home, when I started doing this, and it was my second job. And what happens is somebody gets upset or wants something, and I had to go and take care of it. And by the time I came back, that color that I had just mixed was now dry. Even, it just was too heavy. It just didn't. And I'd have to remix. And because they were so little, it did take time to deal with what was going on. Because I started doing this when my oldest, who's 23, was about 2 weeks old. And so, sometimes it's just, okay, here we are. Don't worry about what I got to do. And so then I just started grabbing the colors and shifting them because it was easier. They were already halfway there. They were cheap enough. Those really heavy body paints are so expensive to have to constantly reinvent the wheel, it felt like. All right, so now for this one, grab a little of that and make that wash. Mm. Mm. There are times where I think that I've made the paint too close and then I paint over it and realize that no, it's gonna dry a little darker. And just enough where it's gonna be nice and subtle versus super contrasty and just in your face. I really enjoyed watercolors, and so when I started doing this, I tended to use a lot of those practices, planning out your white spaces, because it's a pain to have to white stuff out on this canvas. There is absolutely someone was posting a question about, okay, what color white is needlepoint canvas? Because every time I paint it to try to correct something so that it looks like it's not part of it, and it's like, well, you have to just sit there and mix. There's nothing, obviously white paint is not the same color as this canvas, and no matter what, even if you matched it perfectly, you're still going to see it sitting up on the canvas, and so the light hits it differently than it does the actual canvas. So don't worry about it. Just use your regular white to white out with. It happens all the time in the industry. When something happens on a painting, there's a little white out spot, because even the little painters that are doing multiples of them, they definitely aren't going to get them perfect every time. I am very grateful for those people, don't get me wrong, and I appreciate everything they do, because every time I have to count out one of my own designs for these band ornaments I do now, I want to cry, because they feel like they just take me forever. And I'm getting faster at them, but because there's such a precise design, so I design it on the computer to make sure I stay within the area, but then I paint the master from that so that I know they're the colors that I want and not what somebody else would interpret. And I just think there has to be an easier way, but there's not. So you just do it. Okay, did I lose you, Liesel? It's okay if you had to run, but just checking in on you. All right. I think that's okay. All right. Then I'm gonna hit my greens. I think I gave you guys light Hauser and dark Hauser. And they definitely, I tone them down with a little bit of brown typically, because that dark Hauser is very intense and will look black if used straight out of a bottle. Really great to cut a red with if you want to make it to burgundy. Oh, good. Great, Liesel. You finished your letter? Excellent. So you can email me a picture of it since we don't have you on camera. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you like it. And so now you're going to be able to use everything that you learned there to take it to the next step and be able to do your own stuff. And if you want to do another one of those, it's not like I can stop you from using my little lines that I just drew a bunch of waves over. I was like, oh, just some basic curvy lines. That'll be great. I had one lady who got done with hers, and she went, can I make it into a circle after I did a square? I said, yeah. And I gave the sheet that she had for the monogram. That's why there's a circle around them. Because then she went back in and I just had her do like you did with the letter and white around the exterior and wipe out all the corners on it. And oh yes, because I'm gonna make a coaster out of this, and I think it'd be nicer as a round. I went, okay, whatever you want to do. Oh, there's a tiny little leaf that I forgot to put in on mine today when I put this on 13 canvas. All right. And while it's still wet, I'm going to grab just a little bit of that green. And I'm going to cut it with the lighter green. All right. And if you're willing, it would be awesome if you posted it on the painting group and let them know. If you had fun or whatever you want to put. I think we don't get enough people posting on there of them attempting their own. And I'd really like to have more people like we have on the finishing group sharing some of the stuff that we do. Because it is fun. Hmm. It's so funny. Today I worked with so many hydrangeas at the flower shop. I'm going, this leaf just doesn't look right. Why is it annoying me? Because I sat there and, let's see, 5 times 19 and then 3 times. Yeah, the entire wedding was hydrangea. It's like I've touched it enough times that I should be able to recall that leaf. Just not feeling it. There we go. That's a little better. So that's the only thing I think I've done longer is being a florist as well as art. Hmm. Someone's going to have to get creative with their stitching. I got thinking about it today. It's like I'm starting to amass a bunch of little canvases that I'm going to have to put some of them out there because, well, I think my one friend will, I can give that to her for Christmas. One of them. The wave one I just did recently. Okay. It's a little big, but eh. I think it looks bigger just because it's 13 mesh. Okay. Okay, I gotta stop touching it. Like the other night with the cat. It's like, stop touching it. Now, you don't always have to do your background first, but it's one of these times where when you're doing like your monograms, you need to decide what color are you going to do for your background. I'm going to bring this up a little so you can see better. I'm going to put it back. So trying to figure out what your letters are going to be, you know, what's your background, what's going to be darker, what's going to be lighter. So this yellow, trying to see if I have white next to it. Pretty sure I painted the yellow first and then did the B in navy because I knew that it would cover over that. But this, I painted the entire background of florets and then I put the white on. If you want something fun to make it pop, so that it kind of is seen a little easier, Liesel, and well, all of you, but anytime you have like a white, this metallic white really gives it kind of a luster over, and it kind of makes it easier to see as well, because white over the top of something that's really dark can be, the blue especially will want to bleed up through the craft paint. So that's when I use, it's called M. Graham Company. I got this on Amazon, and it is a heavy body paint. So, you know, a bit like painting with cream cheese. And you're just kind of dabbing it over and not doing that back and forth painting like I was talking about. You're dabbing, dabbing, dabbing so that it's as thick as it can be without leaving peaks, you know, like mountain peaks. You don't want your paint to be so thick on there that you have a hard time pulling the needle. But something about blue that if you need to get rid of it, I want you to make sure all your paint's dry. Take your clear matte spray and just go psh, psh, and give it a little shot over the top of the area that you want to get rid of. And even if that means this whole canvas because it's so tiny, and then take your matte medium and put a little dry brush of the matte medium over that same area that you want to have to eradicate, and then come in with your white and put your layers of white on, and it will stop that blue from bleeding up in. And it's not just blue, but blue just seems to be the one that is the hardest to cover. And I don't know if it's because white kind of already has a bluish, like back in the Victorian era, they called it bluing, that you put in with your whites to make them look brighter white. I kind of feel like sometimes it just reflects that hue, especially with the lights that I'm using. It can look very bluey. So these metallic paints are great. If you ever want to, hold on, I gotta find it, because I mixed it in with, have some glitter paint that is just like a glaze that you put on. Aha, there they are. Okay. It's called Diamond Dust. Glamour Dust. This one isn't as good. This is the best. And it's like thinned down Elmer's glue with glitter in it. I swear that's what it is. Or it's this matte medium with glitter in it, dust. So, well, you're welcome, Liesel. And it's 8 o'clock, and I should let you guys keep painting and having fun. But is there any other questions you guys have? Are you good? So I'm going to upload this video tonight. Should be done by tomorrow so that you can refer back to it. Okay. And I will send you the link. And it's up for as long as YouTube lets me keep it up. Okay. Which is forever. They don't take anything down. Oh, cool.
Kelly,
Yes.
one question. Have you ever heard of Posca? The markers?
Yes.
COS?
Yeah. Copic, yes. So, as a finisher, don't use markers. They,
It's not Copic, it's Posca. It says it's acrylic and it doesn't bleed.
oh, Deco, yeah. It's the acrylic paint in a marker,
Yes.
yes. Again, I don't trust them as a finisher because do you do your own finishing? Okay.
I've used it.
Have you? Have you had good luck with it?
No.
No?
The only one I have good luck with, you want me to show you the one I have good luck with?
Yeah, sure.
The Zig Fabricolor, and they're very expensive.
Okay.
Uh,
I did not know Zig was even around anymore because back in the day, and I used the Zig paint pens that when you shake them, they click. So they're the oil base.
Mhm.
None of the markers now are like what the Zig was. So the issue is that, all right, here's the secret. Don't rat me out. So because my masters never get stitched, when I have to do a navy blue or a royal blue, I will use the Deco paint pens. Hear them click. But you
Don't
have,
find them hard to get on the fine lines of the canvas?
nope.
Okay.
It's
I find
just,
that by the time the color comes out, it's like,
I'm talking about, oh my God.
those.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have those too.
So, oh, Posca. Okay. I have not heard anything about those for acrylics. The thing, again, if you use something like this, or if you use any kind of markers, paint over it. It might not make much sense, but what I've found is, number one, these will fade. Number two, as far as some of the lighter colors, I used to actually blend them because they stay wet so long. So I would take some blue and I would take a lighter blue. I'd get it, do like we were doing the wet painting, wet on wet. And you can make them into gradients. But what was happening is that because any of the white in the marker, it was making them fade in color. So what I started doing is I would use these colors to prime it for the solids. And then I would come back in with the color I wanted so that I didn't have to do layer upon layer upon layer to get that nice even solid. For a master, I need to do them kind of as quickly as possible, and nobody was going to be stitching them, so I didn't worry about that when they went to the finisher, they were going to get screwed up, because you never know what these finishers are using to block. And when I say that, I use a little bit of sizing, and that's it. And I use steam. But there are other people that they wet block it, and I'm like, oh, make me want to get ill, because that's where your over dyes run and things like that. Those, a lot of the markers, I won't say those, but they have that alcohol base. And any of that sizing, any of the, it can reignite it, it can reconstitute it, and it'll bleed into your fibers. So I just tell people, if you want to try them, test them on something you don't care about, and with something that you know won't bleed when it goes to the finisher, so that you know whether or not it will work. I would still do a layer of paint over the top of it to be safe. I don't know why it seals it, but it seals it. So sometimes when I'm having to count out something, I'll use those markers and count them out. Deco either bought Zig, or Zig just stopped making the paint pens, and they were the best. They had a better tip. And so that's why when you said that the fabric ones are good, totally worth it then, because
Yeah.
they just had the better ink. And so again, if you were doing this monogram or a monogram, I have used the white markers to put a layer in between a dark color that I just wanted to be able to get that dark color on. Then I've come back in with the white marker and just dabbed it on so it's nice even, then painted my white on top of it, so I didn't have to really crack out my heavy paint. It put a primer of that oil-based paint. And you'd think the rule of thumb is don't mix acrylic and oil, but you're not really mixing it, you're layering it on top of it. So just be very careful that you give them a shot, give your markers a try on your little, extra piece if you want to, and then have it finished and see, stitch it with, make it just something quick and easy. And if you want to learn how to finish a round ornament, because you make a quick and easy round ornament, I have a video you can follow, or you can get a hold of me and I'll show you how to do it. So you can test it out, but you really need to send it to the finisher that you always use, unless you plan on doing it yourself for the test. So I just don't want people to be disappointed that something ran that was their paint, because we've seen it many times on Needlepoint Nation when they're like, I used a Sharpie, or I used this and it bled through. And sometimes I'm like, okay, was that the fiber? But you can see a lot of times it's wool that they've used, and it is something that was underneath that they used. So recently when they did the leaf project and they were telling people to touch up any waste canvas that you could see with the Copic markers, I just was like, oh, please, if some finisher gets a hold of those, it's not going to be fun. Because I've tested everything, because I needed to make my master painting as efficient as possible. And when I had to count things out, I needed something. And so I went back to the oil markers to be able to do that, knowing nothing's going to go from there. So give it your test. Try it out.
I have to run, but I thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you. I know my dog's kind of telling me, you better get home, Mom. It's past 8.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you so much. All right. Bye, Liesel. I'll look at yours and I'll email you back. Talk to you later. Okay.